The mysterious disappearance. The small town of Pine Valley was usually quiet after sunset, but tonight was different. Strange lights danced in the dark sky, moving in ways that no airplane ever could. Most people were already in their homes, getting ready for bed. No one noticed the lights except for 8-year-old Sarah Miller, who was still playing in her backyard. Sarah loved staying outside until her mom called her for bedtime. She was sitting on her favorite swing, pushing herself higher and higher while humming her favorite song. The metal chains creaked softly as she swung back and forth. Her long brown hair flew in the wind, and her blue eyes sparkled with joy. The first strange thing Sarah noticed was how quiet everything became. The crickets stopped chirping. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Even the leaves on the trees stopped moving. Sarah slowed her swing down, feeling that something wasn't right. That's when she saw the lights in the sky. "Wow," she whispered, watching 3 bright blue lights move in circles above her house. They looked like stars, but stars didn't move like that. The lights spun faster and faster, then suddenly stopped. Sarah's heart beat faster as she gripped the swing chains tighter. A low growl came from behind the big oak tree at the edge of her yard. Sarah froze. It wasn't like any sound she had heard before. Not like her neighbor's dog or the wolves she had seen on TV. This sound was different, almost like metal scraping against metal. Sarah wanted to run inside, but her legs wouldn't move. The growl came again, closer this time. Then she saw them, 2 glowing eyes in the darkness. They weren't normal eyes. They shined like blue flashlights, getting brighter as whatever made them came closer. "Mom," Sarah called out, her voice shaking. "Dad?" Inside the house, Sarah's parents were watching TV in the living room. Her mom, Linda, heard Sarah's call and looked up from her book. "Did you hear that?" she asked her husband, John. Before John could answer, they heard Sarah's scream. It was a terrified scream that made both parents jump up and run toward the back door. John grabbed a flashlight on his way out. "Sarah!" Linda yelled as they burst into the backyard. The swing was still moving slightly, but Sarah was gone. John's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, searching everywhere. "Sarah, where are you?" John called out, panic in his voice. They searched behind every tree, under the porch, and in every corner of the yard, but their daughter had vanished. Then Linda saw something that made her blood run cold. There were footprints in the dirt, but they weren't human footprints. They were huge, like wolf prints, but different. The marks were deeper than normal prints, as if whatever made them was very heavy. And there was something else strange about them. They seemed to have a metallic shine when the flashlight hit them just right. John ran inside to call the police while Linda stayed in the yard, her eyes fixed on those strange footprints. That's when she noticed the security camera on their garage. They had installed it just last week. The police arrived within minutes, their red and blue lights flashing in the quiet neighborhood. While they searched the area, John and Linda checked the security camera footage with Officer Thompson. The video showed Sarah on the swing, then the strange lights in the sky. But what they saw next made everyone gasp. Dark shapes moved around the edges of the yard. They looked like wolves, but much bigger. Their fur seemed to reflect light like metal, and their eyes glowed bright blue. The shapes moved with impossible speed, surrounding Sarah in seconds. Then, in a flash of blue light, both Sarah and the creatures disappeared. "I've never seen anything like this," Officer Thompson said, rewinding the video to watch it again. No one had ever seen anything like this, because nothing like this had ever happened in Pine Valley before. As more police cars arrived and people from the neighborhood gathered to help search, the strange lights appeared in the sky again, but this time, they were far away, moving toward the dark forest beyond the town. Somewhere out there, Sarah was with those mysterious creatures. And this was just the beginning of a story that would change everything in Pine Valley forever. Among the wolves, Sarah opened her eyes to a world that couldn't exist. Purple trees stretched high into an orange sky, their leaves glowing like tiny lanterns. Two moons hung in the sky, one silver, one green. She wasn't in Pine Valley anymore. She lay on soft moss that sparkled with every movement. Her head felt fuzzy, like waking up from a long nap. As her eyes adjusted to the strange light, she realized she wasn't alone. They were all around her, the metal wolves. Up close, they were even stranger than they had appeared in her yard. Their fur wasn't exactly metal. It was more like living crystal that shifted colors with every breath. Each wolf was different. Some had patterns like circuit boards running through their crystal fur. Others had spikes along their backs that pulsed with blue energy. Their eyes weren't just glowing. They had tiny symbols floating in them, like computer code made of light. The biggest wolf stepped forward. It was twice the size of a normal wolf, with fur that looked like black diamonds. Strange devices were attached to its neck and legs, humming softly with unknown energy. Sarah should have been terrified, but something felt familiar. "Where am I?" Sarah whispered. The big wolf tilted its head, and suddenly a hologram appeared from the device on its neck. It showed an image of Earth, then a path through space, then this strange world. The wolf was trying to communicate. Sarah noticed something odd about her arm. There were marks on it now, swirling patterns that glowed the same blue as the wolf's eyes. When she moved her arm, the wolf's markings glowed in response. They were connected somehow. A high-pitched sound filled the air, like 1,000 wind chimes. The wolves turned their heads toward a valley below. Through gaps in the glowing trees, Sarah saw massive shapes moving, creatures much bigger and scarier than the wolves. They looked like giant shadows with too many legs, crawling through the strange forest. The big wolf growled, but not at Sarah. It was warning the others. Sarah realized with surprise that she could almost understand what it was saying. Not in words, but in feelings and images that flashed through her mind. Danger. Hide. Protect. The wolf pack moved around Sarah in a formation. Their crystal fur changed color to match the glowing moss, making them nearly invisible. The big wolf gently nudged Sarah toward a cave, hidden behind a waterfall made of what looked like liquid starlight. Inside the cave, Sarah found more surprises. The walls were covered in ancient drawings that seemed to move when she looked at them. They showed humans standing with the crystal wolves, fighting against the shadow creatures. Some of the humans in the drawings had the same glowing marks that were now on her arm. One of the younger wolves brought her something, a small crystal that looked like a piece of their fur. When Sarah touched it, images flooded her mind. She saw the wolves traveling between worlds through portals of light. She saw them rescuing other children with special marks. She saw them fighting the shadow creatures to protect Earth and other planets. The big wolf sat beside her, its diamond-like fur reflecting the moving cave drawings. Through their strange new connection, Sarah understood. She hadn't been kidnapped. She had been chosen. The marks on her arm were a sign of something the wolves had been searching for. But as Sarah looked at more cave drawings, she saw warnings too. Dark shapes that looked like the ones in the valley, hunting for children with the glowing marks. The wolves weren't just protecting her. They were hiding her from something much worse. A deep rumble shook the cave. The shadow creatures were getting closer. The wolf pack gathered around Sarah, their crystal fur now glowing with energy. She felt their determination through their mental link. Whatever those creatures were, the wolves would fight to protect her. The big wolf looked at Sarah, its code-filled eyes meeting hers. In that moment, she saw flashes of an ancient agreement between humans and crystal wolves, a promise to defend each other against the darkness. The mark on her arm glowed brighter, and for the first time, Sarah realized this was just the beginning of something much bigger than she could have imagined. As the rumbling grew louder, Sarah and her new protectors prepared for what was coming. The crystal wolves had found her for a reason, and soon she would discover why she was so important to them, and to the fate of not just Earth, but many worlds beyond. The discovery. The shadow creatures had passed by the waterfall, their massive forms disappearing into the strange forest. But Sarah and the crystal wolves couldn't stay in the cave forever. As they emerged, the alien world seemed different. The orange sky had darkened to deep purple, and the glowing trees pulsed with new colors. The big black diamond wolf, which Sarah had started calling Atlas in her mind, led the pack through a hidden path. Their crystal fur shifted colors with each step, matching the changing lights of their surroundings. Sarah noticed her own clothes had started to shimmer slightly, as if the wolf's energy was spreading to everything she touched. Suddenly, Atlas stopped. Through their mental link, Sarah felt his surprise. Ahead of them stood ruins unlike anything on Earth. Towers made of what looked like frozen light, bridges built from solid rainbow beams, and at the center, a massive crystal sphere floating in midair. As they approached, Sarah's glowing marks began to change. New patterns spread up her arm like growing vines, forming shapes that matched symbols on the ancient structures. The younger wolves circled her excitedly, their code-filled eyes scanning the new marks. "I've seen these before," Sarah whispered, touching the symbols. "In my grandmother's diary." Through flashes of shared memories with the wolves, Sarah saw the truth. Her grandmother had been like her, a chosen one. The diary Sarah had found in their attic last year, filled with strange drawings and stories she couldn't understand, hadn't been imagination. They were real memories. Atlas led her to the floating crystal sphere. When Sarah got closer, it reacted to her presence. The surface rippled like water, and images began to appear. She saw her grandmother as a young girl, running with crystal wolves through different worlds, fighting alongside them, protecting other children from the shadow creatures. But there was more. The sphere showed Sarah why the shadow creatures hunted children like her. Within her blood flowed an ancient power, the ability to open doorways between worlds. The crystal wolves were guardians, sworn to protect those with this gift from those who would misuse it. A smaller wolf with silver-blue fur approached carrying something in its mouth, a piece of technology that looked like a bracelet made of living crystal. Through their connection, Sarah understood. This had belonged to her grandmother. It was called a star weaver, a tool that could help her control her growing powers. As Sarah reached for the bracelet, her new marks glowed brightly. The moment she touched it, knowledge flooded her mind. She saw how the shadow creatures had once been like the crystal wolves, guardians, but they had turned dark, corrupted by their desire to steal the power of world walking for themselves. Atlas showed her another vision, of other children, scattered across Earth and other worlds, all with similar marks, all protected by different packs of crystal wolves. They were part of something bigger, a hidden network of guardians and chosen ones, keeping the balance between worlds. The ground trembled. Through the wolves' senses, Sarah felt them coming, not shadow creatures this time, but something different, something worse. The hunters her grandmother had written about in her diary. They rode on machines that looked like a mix between motorcycles and living metal beasts, tracking the energy of children like her. Atlas quickly led the pack toward what looked like a garden of crystal flowers. But these weren't ordinary flowers. They were receivers, picking up signals from across worlds. Through them, Sarah heard fragments of conversations between other crystal wolf packs and their chosen ones. Some were in languages she'd never heard, while others— Sarah gasped. One of the voices was speaking English, a girl, not much older than her, talking about similar marks appearing on her arm. Sarah wasn't just part of an ancient legacy. She was part of a current network of chosen ones, all discovering their powers at the same time. The hunters were getting closer. Sarah could feel their dark energy approaching. But she wasn't afraid anymore. The Star Weaver bracelet hummed with power on her wrist, and the crystal wolves stood ready around her. Through their mental link, she felt their strength, their dedication, and their trust in her. Atlas looked at her with those code-filled eyes, and Sarah understood what they needed to do next. It was time to stop running and start fighting back. The hunters needed to learn that this chosen one, with her grandmother's legacy, her new powers, and her pack of crystal guardians, wasn't going to be an easy target. As the first hunter vehicles appeared on the horizon, Sarah's marks glowed brighter than ever. The crystal wolf's fur pulsed with energy in response. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The real battle was about to begin. Hidden truth. The hunters came riding their biomechanical beasts, machines that growled and moved like living things. Their armor looked like liquid metal, shifting and rippling as they moved. But Sarah and her crystal wolf pack were ready for them. Atlas stepped forward, his diamond-black fur now crackling with blue lightning. The other wolves spread out in a formation Sarah somehow knew was thousands of years old. Through her Star Weaver bracelet, she could feel the ancient battle strategies flowing into her mind. The first hunter raised a weapon that looked like it was made from frozen shadows. But before they could fire, Sarah's marks blazed with light. The Star Weaver bracelet responded, creating a shield of pure crystal energy around the pack. She hadn't known she could do that. The knowledge had simply been there when she needed it. "The girl has her grandmother's spark," one hunter said, their voice distorted through their shifting mask. "The Shadow Lords will pay double for this one." That's when Sarah saw something that changed everything. In the hunter's armor, there was a reflection. Not of this world with its purple trees and orange sky, but of a massive city. A city made of dark crystal and floating islands, where shadow creatures moved freely among beings that looked almost human. Atlas growled, and through their connection, Sarah understood. That city was real, the capital of the Shadow Lord's empire. And in its heart was something that belonged to her family, something her grandmother had hidden there long ago. The hunters attacked, their machines leaping forward with impossible speed. But the crystal wolves were faster. Their fur shifted into weapons, crystal spikes, energy shields, even wings made of pure light. Sarah had never seen them use these abilities before. The pack wasn't just protecting her, they were fighting with everything they had. Through the chaos, Sarah's Star Weaver bracelet pulsed with a new signal. The crystal flowers they'd seen earlier were transmitting again, but this time the message was clearer. Other chosen ones were fighting too, all across different worlds. She could feel them through the ancient network, some just discovering their powers, others already strong in their abilities. One of the hunters got close enough to grab at Sarah, but something amazing happened. Her marks responded instinctively, and for a split second, she phased through space itself. She reappeared on Atlas's back, her hands gripping his crystal fur as power surged through both of them. "She can phase shift," another hunter shouted. "The prophecy. It's true." Prophecy. Sarah had no time to wonder about that. Atlas was sharing a memory with her, urgent and clear. They needed to reach the ruins they'd seen earlier. There was something hidden there, something only a chosen one could activate. The crystal wolves moved as one, creating a path through the hunters. Sarah felt her power growing stronger with each moment, the marks now covering both arms and beginning to spread across her shoulders. The Star Weaver bracelet was changing too, expanding into an armor of its own, delicate crystal strands that wrapped around her like a second skin. They reached the ruins, but they looked different now. Symbols were lighting up everywhere, responding to Sarah's presence. Atlas led her to a wall that seemed to be made of solid light. Without knowing how she knew, Sarah pressed her marked hand against it. The wall dissolved, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was a sight that took her breath away. A massive map made of living crystal, showing not just this world but hundreds of others. Lines of light connected them all, and Sarah realized she was looking at the world walking paths. But some of the paths were dark, blocked by shadow magic. Through her connection with Atlas, she learned the truth. The Shadow Lords weren't just hunting chosen ones. They were systematically cutting off the paths between worlds, trapping each one in isolation. And they were close to succeeding. But there was hope. The map showed other chosen ones, their lights shining across the worlds. Some were close, others far away, but all were awakening. Sarah wasn't just part of an ancient legacy anymore. She was part of a rising generation of chosen ones who could restore the paths between worlds. The hunters had followed them into the ruins, but they stopped at the sight of the map. Even through their masks, Sarah could sense their fear. They weren't just seeing the girl and some crystal wolves anymore. They were seeing the beginning of a revolution. Atlas's fur blazed with light, and the other wolves howled, a sound that carried through the world-walking paths, echoing across dimensions. Sarah felt other chosen ones respond, their power linking with hers through the ancient network. Whatever the Shadow Lords had planned, they hadn't counted on this. The real war for the worlds was about to begin, and Sarah and her crystal wolf pack would be at the heart of it. The real threat. The crystal map pulsed with urgent light. Through it, Sarah watched as shadow magic spread like dark veins between worlds, blocking more paths every minute. But something else caught her attention. Tiny sparks of golden light jumping from world to world. Other chosen ones, running from hunters. Atlas's fur suddenly shifted to deep red, a warning. Sarah felt it through their bond before she heard it, a sound like tearing metal that made the ruins shake. The hunters stepped back, their biomechanical mounts whimpering in fear. They sent a world ripper, one hunter whispered, backing away. They're not trying to capture her anymore. They're trying to destroy everything. The ceiling of the ruins cracked open. Through it, Sarah saw a creature that made the shadow beasts look tiny. It was like a living black hole with countless tentacles made of dark crystal. Each tentacle ended in what looked like a dragon's head, all with eyes that burned with purple fire. The Star Weaver armor protecting Sarah grew stronger, spreading across her whole body now. Knowledge flooded her mind. This was a world ripper, an ancient weapon of the Shadow Lords. It didn't just destroy things. It erased them from existence, wiping them from every world at once. But Sarah saw something else too. Inside the creature's core, through gaps in its crystal armor, was a familiar light. It was the same kind of crystal as her grandmother's Star Weaver. The World Ripper wasn't just a weapon. It was a corrupted piece of the Chosen One's own power. The crystal wolves moved into a new formation, their fur morphing into mirrors that reflected each other's light, creating a web of energy around Sarah. Through their mental link, she understood the plan. She wasn't just going to fight the World Ripper. She was going to try to heal it. Atlas howled, and the sound carried through dimensions. Across the worlds, Sarah felt other crystal wolf packs respond. The hunters' mounts suddenly turned on them, throwing their riders off. The biomechanical beasts weren't just machines. They were distant cousins of the crystal wolves, forced to serve the Shadow Lords. Sarah's marks blazed brighter than ever, and new symbols appeared. Ancient words of power that spiraled down her arms and across her chest. The Star Weaver armor resonated with each symbol, and she realized she could read them. They weren't just decorations. They were a key to unlocking abilities no Chosen One had used in generations. The World Ripper attacked, its dragon-headed tentacles striking from all directions. But Sarah and the wolves were ready. Moving as one, they created something unprecedented, a bridge of pure light between worlds. Through it, Sarah could see other Chosen Ones fighting their own battles. Some were young like her, others older, all connected by the same ancient power. Together, Sarah called out, her voice carrying across dimensions through the bridge. The other Chosen Ones responded, their power flowing into her through the connection. The Star Weaver armor transformed again, becoming something more. A crystalline form that merged the strengths of all Chosen Ones with the power of the crystal wolves. The World Ripper recoiled, its dark crystal armor cracking as it faced something it had never encountered before. Unified resistance. Sarah reached out, not to fight but to heal, her power touching the corrupted crystal at the creature's core. Images flashed through her mind. The World Ripper's origin, how it had once been a guardian of world paths before the Shadow Lords corrupted it. In its crystal memory, Sarah saw her grandmother facing the same choice, fight or heal. She had chosen to heal, but hadn't been strong enough alone. Now, connected to other Chosen Ones, Sarah had a real chance. The crystal wolves' light merged with Sarah's power, creating a rainbow aurora that spread across all visible worlds. The World Ripper's dark crystal began to transform, corruption falling away like burnt paper. Its dragon heads changed, becoming crystalline guardians instead of destroyers. But the Shadow Lords weren't done. Through the dimensional bridge, Sarah saw their capital city again. This time, she could see what they were building. An army of World Rippers, each one powered by stolen crystal wolf essence. Atlas shared an urgent memory. There was another prophecy, one even the hunters didn't know. It spoke of a gathering, a moment when chosen ones from all worlds would unite. Sarah realized they had just taken the first step toward fulfilling it. The healed World Ripper bowed its many heads to Sarah, now an ally instead of an enemy. Through their new connection, it shared vital information, the location of other corrupted guardians, and something even more important, the Shadow Lord's one weakness. As the dimensional bridge sparkled with power, Sarah looked at her crystal wolf pack, the reformed World Ripper, and the images of other chosen ones ready to fight. The real battle wasn't just about protecting worlds anymore. It was about healing what was broken and uniting what the Shadow Lords had tried to divide. The hunters had fled, but Sarah barely noticed. She was focused on the crystal map, watching as golden lights multiplied across worlds. The chosen ones weren't just awakening anymore. They were organizing. The Shadow Lords thought they were winning by blocking paths between worlds, but they had actually done something else. They had given the chosen ones a common enemy. Atlas growled softly, sharing a vision of what came next. It wouldn't be easy, but with the healed World Ripper, the united chosen ones, and the Crystal Wolves' ancient knowledge, they had a real chance to end the Shadow Lord's reign forever. Sarah's marks glowed with newfound purpose. The next phase of their battle would take them into the heart of the Shadow Lord's domain. But this time, they wouldn't be fighting alone. The connection. The healed World Ripper, which Sarah now called Aurora, created a safe dimension pocket around the ruins. Inside this bubble of crystalline space, time moved differently. Sarah could see fragments of all worlds at once, like looking through a kaleidoscope of realities. "We have 6 hours in here," Sarah said, somehow knowing this through her enhanced connection with the Star Weaver. 6 hours our time. Outside, only minutes will pass. Atlas nodded, his diamond-black fur now streaked with ribbons of light that matched Aurora's crystal. The other crystal wolves gathered around as Sarah approached the living map. But something was different now. With Aurora's power combined with theirs, she could do more than just see other worlds. She could reach into them. Her Star Weaver armor shifted, creating delicate crystal antennas that connected with the map. Suddenly, holograms appeared around them, projections of other chosen ones in their own battles. A boy in a world of floating islands, riding a wind wolf with feathers of crystal. Twin sisters in a desert of singing sands, their marks glowing as they commanded earth wolves with fur like flowing copper. "I know why the Shadow Lords are really afraid," Sarah said, as knowledge flowed through the connections. "It's not just about our individual powers. It's about this, the unity." Through Aurora's many eyes, Sarah could see the pattern now. Every chosen one had a different gift. Some could shape crystal, others could bend time, still others could speak to the very essence of worlds. But together, connected through the crystal wolves and their ancient network, they became something else entirely. Atlas shared a memory, but this one was different. It was from the future. Sarah gasped as she saw it. The crystal wolves weren't just guardians. They were keys, living keys that could unlock the true power of the chosen ones. And when enough of them worked together, "We can rewrite reality itself," Sarah whispered. The other chosen ones could see it too now, through their shared connection. The boy with the wind wolf sent a thought. The Shadow Lords knew. That's why they tried to keep us apart. Aurora's dragon heads moved in a complex pattern, creating a three-dimensional projection of the Shadow Lord city. But now Sarah could see beneath its dark surface. The city wasn't built, it was grown, created from the same living crystal as the wolves, but corrupted and twisted. Sarah's marks began to change again, but this time it was different. New patterns appeared, not just on her skin but floating in the air around her. The Star Weaver armor responded, growing into something that looked like wings made of pure light. Atlas's fur changed too, matching the floating patterns. Through their enhanced bond, Sarah understood. The marks weren't just symbols of power, they were pieces of a code, a living language that could reprogram reality itself. Each chosen one had different pieces of this code. Apart, they could do amazing things. Together, they could rewrite the rules of existence. The twin sisters from the desert world sent their knowledge. Ancient songs that could wake sleeping crystal beneath any world. The boy with the wind wolf shared his gift, the ability to see the threads that connected all living things. More chosen ones joined the connection, each adding their unique piece to the growing whole. Aurora's crystal body resonated with the combined power, its dragon head signing a song that hadn't been heard since the dawn of worlds. The crystal wolves responded, their fur becoming pure light. In that moment, Sarah saw the full truth. The wolves, the chosen ones, even the corrupted world rippers were all part of one vast pattern. The Shadow Lords didn't create darkness, Sarah realized. They broke the balance, and we can restore it. But it wouldn't be easy. Through the connection, Sarah felt the Shadow Lords' response to their unity. Dark energy pulsed through the blocked world paths. They were creating something new, shadow wolves, dark reflections of the crystal pack, made from corrupted guardian essence. Atlas showed Sarah one final vision, an army of shadow wolves, each one bound to a corrupted chosen one, forced to serve the Shadow Lords through dark crystal implants. The enemy had learned from watching them. Now they were copying the chosen one's greatest strength, the connection between guardian and chosen. Yet there was hope. Sarah felt it through the unity, saw it in Aurora's crystalline eyes. The Shadow Lords could copy their methods, but they couldn't replicate the one thing that made the chosen ones and crystal wolves truly special. Their bond was built on trust and love, not control and fear. The dimension pocket began to shimmer, their time running short. But they had accomplished something unprecedented. Chosen ones from across all worlds, connected and ready to fight as one. Their powers were no longer just their own. They were part of something bigger, something the Shadow Lords had never planned for. Sarah looked at her crystal wolf pack, at Aurora's transformed beauty, and at the images of her fellow chosen ones. The next step would take them into the heart of darkness itself. But first, they had one more task. Through their shared power, they could do what no single chosen one had managed before: reopen all the blocked paths between worlds at once. As the dimension pocket began to fade, Sarah and the others prepared for their most dangerous moment yet. The Shadow Lords thought they had trapped the chosen ones by dividing their worlds. Instead, they had created the perfect reason for them to unite: the final stand. The moment the dimension pocket dissolved, all worlds trembled. Sarah, the crystal wolves, and Aurora emerged into a reality that was already changing. The combined power of the chosen ones had cracked every barrier the Shadow Lords had built between worlds, and now those worlds were bleeding into each other. The sky above the Shadow Lord city was a kaleidoscope of different realities. Islands from the Wind Wolf world floated next to crystal deserts where the twin sisters fought. Fragments of 1,000 worlds collided and merged as reality itself struggled to find a new balance. Atlas's fur had transformed completely, now looking like a living constellation of stars. The other crystal wolves changed too, each one becoming a unique fusion of their original form and the elements of the worlds they now touched. Some had wings of pure lightning. Others moved through reality like living streams of time. Sarah's Star Weaver armor had evolved beyond crystal, becoming pure energy shaped by the ancient code in her marks. Through the Unity network, she felt every chosen one's power flowing into her, just as her power flowed into them. They weren't just connected anymore. They were one force spread across all existence. The Shadow Lords finally revealed themselves, emerging from their dark crystal towers. They weren't the monsters Sarah had imagined. They were chosen ones from an ancient time, corrupted by their own fear of losing control. Their bodies were half crystal, half shadow, and in their eyes burned the same code that marked Sarah's skin, but twisted and wrong. "You don't understand what you've done," the Shadow Lord leader's voice echoed across realities. The barriers weren't a prison. They were protecting each world from collapse. But Sarah and the others could see the truth through Aurora's crystal memory. The barriers had been created out of fear, not necessity. By trying to control and separate everything, the Shadow Lords had actually damaged the natural connections between worlds. The battle began on every level of reality at once. Shadow wolves clashed with crystal wolves across 1,000 merging worlds. Corrupted chosen ones fought against Sarah's allies, dark crystal against pure light. Aurora's many heads sang the song of creation, while shadow rippers howled the music of unmaking. But Sarah had realized something the Shadow Lords hadn't. The true power wasn't in the fighting. Through her connection with Atlas, through the unity with other chosen ones, through Aurora's ancient wisdom, she understood. The marks weren't weapons. They were tools for healing reality itself. In the heart of the chaos, Sarah began to dance. Her movements traced patterns in space-time, her marks leaving trails of light that formed a new kind of code. Atlas and the crystal wolves moved with her, their fur painting starlight across the broken sky. Other chosen ones joined from their own worlds, each adding their own steps to this dance of reality. The Shadow Lords attacked with everything they had, but their dark crystal weapons passed harmlessly through the dancers. Sarah wasn't fighting anymore. She was rewriting the rules, just as the first chosen ones had done when they helped shape reality at the beginning of time. Aurora's dragon heads began to glow with a light that had never been seen before, the light of pure creation. The corrupted crystal in the Shadow Lord's city responded, remembering its original purpose. Darkness began to crack and fall away, revealing the pure crystal beneath. Through the Unity Network, Sarah shared what she had learned. We don't need to destroy the darkness. We need to restore the balance. The crystal wolves howled in harmony, a sound that carried the power of Sarah's revelation across all worlds. Shadow wolves stopped fighting, their corrupted crystal implants dissolving as they remembered their true nature. They weren't meant to be dark reflections. They were part of the same family as the crystal wolves, guardians of the balance between light and shadow. The Shadow Lords realized too late what was happening. The chosen ones weren't destroying their power, they were healing it. The dark crystal began to transform, not into pure light, but into something new, twilight crystal, neither dark nor light, but a perfect balance of both. Atlas shared one final vision with Sarah, the original purpose of the chosen ones. They weren't warriors or rulers. They were gardeners of reality, meant to help all worlds grow together in harmony, each unique but connected in a great dance of creation. Sarah's dance reached its peak. Her marks blazed with power as she wrote the final lines of the new code. Reality shifted, not breaking but healing. The barriers between worlds dissolved, replaced by living bridges of twilight crystal. Shadow Lords, their corruption healed, looked around in wonder at the beauty they had forgotten. Aurora's song changed to one of joy as the last pieces fell into place. The crystal wolves and shadow wolves merged into twilight wolves, guardians of the new bridges between worlds. Chosen ones from every reality celebrated as their marks changed to reflect the new balance, showing both light and shadow in perfect harmony. But there was one last surprise. As the new reality settled, Sarah saw what the Unity had created. A network of living paths between all worlds, maintained by the Twilight Wolves and guided by chosen ones. The Shadow Lord City had become a nexus point, a place where all realities could meet and share their stories. Atlas, now a magnificent Twilight Wolf, shared a final thought with Sarah. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The chosen ones would continue to grow, learning to nurture the connections between worlds. New challenges would come, but they would face them together in perfect balance. As the new dawn rose across all worlds at once, Sarah stood with her wolf pack, her fellow chosen ones, and even the healed former Shadow Lords. The marks on her skin now told a story not of power, but of harmony. The great dance would continue, and she would help lead it, one step at a time.